All right, welcome back to Vuln Vibes, everybody. We've got another deep dive ready for you.
Definitely.
And today we're looking at some pretty gnarly vulnerabilities
Yeah,
in Ubiquiti's UniFi Protect cameras.
that's right.
So, for those of you listening, we don't need to spend too much time on the basics.
Right.
We're all familiar with MITRE, ATT, and CK framework and kill chains and 0 days and all that stuff. So
Definitely familiar.
let's just jump right into it.
Yeah, let's get to the meat.
So for anybody who's not familiar with these cameras, I mean, these things are everywhere.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Ubiquiti is a huge name in networking gear.
Right.
I mean, you see their stuff in businesses, homes,
Yeah.
pretty much anywhere you go.
And so when these vulnerabilities came out,
Huge deal.
yeah, it's a pretty big deal. And they were discovered at the recent P2Own competition.
Right. Which is always an interesting one.
Yeah. And for anyone who's not familiar with P2Own, it's basically a hacking competition.
Yeah, it's like the Super Bowl of hacking.
Yeah, where security researchers,
yeah.
they go head to head and they try to
Exploit stuff.
exploit these systems. And it's not just theoretical.
No.
They actually have
For
to.
real world stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, like fully functional systems right there.
Right.
You gotta make it work.
So, yeah, that's where these vulnerabilities were found.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Serious stuff.
yeah. So what's the most severe one that we're looking at?
I mean, the one that really caught my eye was CVE-2025-23115.
Okay.
That's remote code execution.
Okay. So
That's a big one.
that's a big one.
CVSS 3.0 score of 9.0. So
Yeah. So that's critical.
yeah, that's like, you got to patch this yesterday kind of stuff.
Right.
And basically, I mean, what it lets an attacker do is get complete control of the device
Oh, wow.
through the management network.
Okay. And so you're talking about somebody could,
I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
They could be watching
Right.
video feed.
like everything that the camera sees,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
they could be manipulating.
They can manipulate recordings.
Recordings, right? Like make it look like something happened that didn't.
Oh, yeah. Tamper with evidence, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I mean, it could even be used as a springboard to attack other devices on the network.
Right. Yeah. So this is not just.
No, this is full-blown compromise.
Yeah. This is like full-on system compromise.
Yeah.
Not just somebody watching your video feed.
Exactly.
So that's CVE 2025-23115.
Yeah.
What other fun stuff did they find?
Well, and how about CVE 2025-23116?
Okay.
This one's an authentication bypass.
Okay. So what's the CVSS score on that one?
9.6.
Oh, wow. So even higher.
Even higher, yeah.
So this is
bad.
yeah.
So this one basically exploits a feature called auto-adduct bridge devices.
Yeah.
And it basically lets anyone within Wi-Fi range potentially hijack the camera.
So anybody who's just, driving down the street or walking by your house
Yeah, if they're close enough, they could potentially get in.
and they're completely bypassing authentication. Yeah.
Right? It's like leaving your front door wide open.
Yeah. Like there's no security there at all.
Exactly.
So this is kind of like,
Yeah.
I guess, kind of a worst case scenario in a way.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about,
Yeah, this is pretty bad.
it could be anybody.
It expands the attack surface so much.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It's not just somebody who has access to your network.
Right. Anyone who can get within Wi-Fi range.
Yeah.
Potentially a threat.
And so what are we talking about here? Like, what are some real world implications?
Oh, man. I mean, you can think of all sorts of nasty scenarios.
Yeah.
Like, what if you've got a disgruntled employee
Right.
or a competitor who wants to sabotage you?
Yeah.
They could be accessing sensitive camera feeds,
Yeah.
tampering with security footage.
Right.
I mean, even disrupting your operations. Like,
Yeah.
if they can control the cameras, they can cause all sorts of chaos.
Right. Right. And then obviously, we're talking about businesses here, but
Yeah.
this also applies to home security too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, somebody could be watching your family
Right.
through these cameras without you even knowing it.
Yep. And that's not just a data breach. That's a physical security issue, too.
Yeah. So this is pretty serious stuff. And
Yeah.
we've only talked about 2 of the vulnerabilities so far.
Right.
What about the other ones?
So there are 3 more that were discovered.
Okay.
They're rated as medium severity.
Okay.
So, not quite as critical as the first 2,
Right.
but, still something to be concerned about.
Yeah. I mean, medium severity still means that,
Yeah, there's still a vulnerability there.
yeah, that something could happen.
Right, exactly.
So what are those vulnerabilities?
All right, so we've got CVE 2025-23117.
Okay.
That one affects firmware updates.
Okay.
CVE 2025-23118.
Okay.
That one messes with certificate validation.
Okay.
And then CVE 2025-23119.
Okay.
That one plays with escape sequences.
And so, I mean, it sounds like even though these are, medium severity,
Right.
they could still be pretty dangerous.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're like cracks in the foundation.
Right.
They might not seem like a big deal on their own, but they could allow an attacker to get in
Right.
and then exploit those more critical vulnerabilities that we talked about.
Right. Yeah. So it's like a chain reaction.
Exactly.
One thing leads to another.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden,
You got a major problem.
yeah, you've got a major problem.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've talked about all these different vulnerabilities.
Right.
And it seems like a pretty common theme with IoT devices.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We see these kinds of things popping up all the time.
All the time.
What is it about IoT devices that makes them so vulnerable?
Well, I think there are a couple of factors at play.
Okay.
First of all, these devices are often designed with functionality in mind.
Right.
They want to make sure the device works. They want to make sure it's got all the features that people want.
Right.
And sometimes security gets treated as an afterthought.
Right. Yeah, it's like, oh, we'll just slap some security on at the end.
Exactly.
And then the other thing is that...
I mean, these devices are often connected to the internet 24/7.
Right.
Which, expands the attack surface tremendously.
Well, yeah, because anybody in the world
right.
could potentially attack them.
Exactly.
So what can manufacturers like Ubiquiti do
Well, I
to
think
kind of address these issues?
they really need to start thinking about security from the very beginning.
Okay.
Like bake it into the design process.
Okay.
They need to be doing rigorous security testing
Right.
throughout the development cycle.
Okay.
And they need to be proactive about vulnerability disclosure and patching.
Okay, so it's not just about fixing the vulnerabilities.
It's about finding them before the bad guys do.
Right, and getting those patches out there.
Exactly.
So what about users?
Well, I mean, the most important thing is to keep your devices updated.
Okay.
Ubiquiti has released patches for all of these vulnerabilities, so you need to make sure that you're running the latest firmware
Okay.
on all of your devices.
And, I mean, it sounds like that's probably good advice for any IoT device.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Not just these cameras.
Any device that's connected to the internet, you want to make sure it's running the latest software.
Right.
And it's also important to follow basic security practices,
Wow.
like changing default passwords
Right.
and enabling two-factor authentication wherever possible.
So it sounds like it's really a shared responsibility here.
Absolutely.
The manufacturers need to do their part,
Right.
but the users also need to do their part.
Yep. We all have a role to play in keeping our devices secure.
So before we wrap up, is there anything else that you think our listeners should know about these vulnerabilities?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway here is that this is a wake-up call.
Okay.
We're seeing increasingly sophisticated attacks
Right.
targeting IoT devices.
Right.
And we need to be prepared.
Yeah.
We need to start taking security seriously.
All right, well, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
It's definitely been an interesting one.
A lot of good information here, so thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
Happy to be here.
And to our listeners out there, stay safe, stay informed, and keep those systems secure. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.